Hi everyone, thanks for joining this session on how to become a team superhero. My name is Torren Manson. I've been working with Skype for Business for quite some time now, since it was Live Communication Server 2003. I got some experience and certification in the security network space, which comes in quite handy with the networking stack around Skype for Business and real-time communication. And outside of hardcore technology, I coordinate a couple of user groups. Here is our superhero agenda. We'll start off with a disclaimer, talk about some Skype for Business and Teams news that came out around the Ignite timeframe. Then we'll jump into an introduction of Teams, Teams network requirements, permissions auditing and logging, licensing, and where you can learn more. So about that disclaimer, Microsoft's cloud-first, mobile-first approach has enabled a much faster, agile release strategy, and new features and capabilities are rolling out all the time. I'm recording this session in late October 2017, so if it's November or later, you'll want to hit up the links that I have at the end of this presentation and make sure that the information you're going on in my presentation is still up to date. I was doing another presentation 2 days ago, and about an hour before that presentation kicked off, Microsoft did some updates to the number of users that could be in a team. Before we get into Teams, a word on Skype for Business. Teams has been announced as Microsoft's go-to client going forward in the online space, and it will, over time, replace Skype for Business. Over time and not immediate. For those of you who are still running on-prem server, you should know that Skype for Business 2019 server is expected in the second half of 2018. And the principal program manager for Skype for Business has stated that it is unlikely that that 2019 release will be the last on-prem version. So if we imagine that the next on-prem version is 2021, throw on 5 years of mainstream support for that, and you're good until 2026. That gives you plenty of time to make any adjustments to your IT plans. Your IT plans probably don't even go out to 2026, so plenty of time for input into your IT plans. If you're looking for more details on the plans for Skype for Business, Skype for Business Online, and Teams, and what they mean to organizations and IT pros, check out my blog and the links that I have at the end of the presentation. Meanwhile, please do keep calm and Skype on. So, introducing Teams, the superhero basics. What is Teams? Teams is a chat-based workspace powered by Office 365. It is customizable, it is secure, it is a hub for teamwork rather than just a unified communication platform like Skype for Business. Customization of Teams. Within Teams product, you can create a number of teams, and under each team you can create a number of channels, and you can set these up to best suit your organization. Within each channel, you have something called tabs that allow you to have an appearance of other Office 365 apps like OneNote or SharePoint, and some third-party integrations as well. You also have bots. There's Tbot, which is included for help within Teams, and there's a number of third-party bots can snap in as well. There's something called connectors, and these allow third-party sites like Twitter, Dynamics, and GitHub to send notifications into a channel and interact with that channel. There are great development resources behind this extensibility. You are not limited to picking just a couple of things off the shelf. You can very much write your own and bring your own. So let's take a quick minute to talk about Teams versus Skype for Business. Skype for Business is a people-based conversation at any given moment in time. Teams gets rid of that notion of a moment in time and isn't necessarily just about people having a conversation. It's about a number of conversations around a particular topic. Skype for Business doesn't have the extensibility and integration into the rest of Office 365 and those third-party apps that we just spoke about, the bots, the tabs, and the connectors. I've got 3 great examples of some recent experiences with Teams. One that I read about was UCOM's geek Jonathan McKinney built a team that he used to coordinate people at Ignite. They included tabs for the Power BI schedule browser, Twitter stream integration, maps, reservation information, and conversations about the various scenarios. Within my own organization, we had team members who were at Ignite, were live blogging within Teams. And those of us who were watching either via the live streams or just following along with that live streaming could have them ask questions on our behalf, and we could ask them for some clarification about what was being said around some of the key releases. And the third example was a recent one at work. We had submitted an RFP to a corporation for some work they needed done, and we were shortlisted and invited to present to them and do a bit of a meet and greet with their team. The program manager posted all of the relevant documents to Teams. We've begun building our presentation and our response list to their questions and editing these and discussing these within Teams. We used Teams as follow-up after that meeting as well. So it was fantastic to have all of the stuff in one place. Subsequent to that meeting at the client, we added another team member. No one needed to debrief that team member as to what was going on. They had access to the team and could go back and they could look at all the presentation information and all of the conversations that we had had to that point. Really a fantastic example of a persistent topic-based conversation rather than a point-in-time conversation that we would have had otherwise through Skype for Business with documents either emailed about or via SharePoint. Speaking of SharePoint, let's have a look at Microsoft's 365 teamwork strategy. Where do we start a conversation? SharePoint is kind of the core of all of this. It's our files and our site contents. Over to the right, we can see Yammer, and this is used for what we call the outer loop. So these are people in your organization that you connect with, but they're not necessarily your direct team members. You don't do broad, deep teamwork with them. Your inner loop is those team members where you go through that process of editing those documents and detailed review and communications. And at the bottom, we have Outlook, which is the ubiquitous communication platform for both internal and external communications. So if you're sitting there scratching your head, wondering what do I use to have a conversation within my organization, this chart from Microsoft really helped me out a lot to understand that and where the various platforms fit together. So the clients for Microsoft Teams, there are web clients, desktop clients, and mobile clients. They are as near to feature parity as you can get. For example, the web client does not yet support real-time communication. One of the really cool things or one of the really bad things about these clients, depending on your point of view, is that the clients auto-update. So there is no central IT control of pushing out MSI files and group policy and all of this stuff. The apps will automatically update, much like the experience we're used to from our mobile phones. This is fantastic from a feature and supportability point of view because it makes sure that you always have the capability for the latest features as long as your administrators are turning them on within Office 365. A couple of steps toward adopting Teams. You can take managed and unmanaged strategies, and which of these you'll take depends on your organization. So an unmanaged strategy is essentially you turn on all of the features and allow your users to go through a training process, figure out how to use these features, and off they go. This might not work in a larger organization or an organization that is a little more resistant to change. There you probably want to use a managed change strategy where you would, for example, roll out your chat first, get everyone comfortable with the chat, then introduce meetings into Teams, and then finally introduce calling into Teams. There are 4 steps that Microsoft has identified to adopting Teams. The first thing that you want to do is optimize. And that's not optimize Teams, that's optimize your existing environment to make sure it's ready for Teams. And we'll dive into what that looks like in the next couple of slides here. Then you're going to want to pilot like any other IT rollout. Then you'll want to enable for the rest of your users and support them through that transition into a new product. And then you'll want to drive value through adoption of all of these great features that are in this and changing how people work, like that example that I went to earlier of having the documents in the channel within Teams and working within that one location around those documents and around the goal of this meeting with the customer after the RFP response. Keep in mind that Teams is built on top of many of the existing Office 365 features and has some newly built services. Documents, for example, that you share in a channel are stored in SharePoint. Documents that you share in a chat are stored in OneDrive for Business. And Exchange handles your compliance of private chats, meeting invites, things like syncing with team calendars. This is an overview of the high-level architecture of Teams. You can see in the purple color is all of the Teams and the new Teams components. The orangey yellow color is all of the existing Skype for Business services. and Skype services from the new Skype platform. And then in black, you've got existing Azure and Office 365 services, federation, and guest access. In Skype for Business, we have the concept of federation. And federation is a user in another organization communicating with you. They are seeing your presence, they're able to IM you, they can conduct a voice call or a video call with you or an ad hoc meeting. Guest access is when someone from another organization has full access within your team. They're able to access the contents of the team, the tabs, the bots, the documents. So these are two different approaches for two different purposes. We were having a conversation after a user group meeting recently trying to clarify the difference between federation and guest access. And we came up with an analogy involving grandmas, which is awesome. Federation is like a phone call with your grandma. She's talking to you, she's interacting with you, but she's not in your house. Guest access is when grandma comes over to visit. She's in your house, she's probably making jam in your kitchen, she's doing all those great grandma things in your house. Let's have a look now at the telephony roadmap for Teams for Superheroes. Skype for Business right now, when you're in Skype for Business online and need access to either your PBX on premises or to some sort of a PSTN connection that terminates on premises, you've got two options. One is a hybrid deployment. The other is to use Cloud Connector Edition to connect your Skype for Business online to these services. This goes away in the future with Teams, and you will be able to bring your own SIP trunk directly into Office 365 so that Teams can consume those PSTN and PBX services. Stay tuned for more details on exactly what this looks like, but for anyone who's got Skype for Business and has gone through Cloud Connector Edition deployment and support, you know it's not the most enjoyable product to work with. So the elimination of this from an administrative point of view, but also just a resourcing point of view, is certainly welcome. Let's turn our attention now to networking in Teams, and well, this is actually quite easy. With the Teams client interacting with Office 365, the ports and the protocols are way simpler. The client will prefer UDP and will use these 4 ports that I've outlined. You'll have a fixed port for signaling, a fixed port for voice, another fixed port for video, and a fixed port for application sharing. That is fantastic. Of course, there is TCP 443 as a fallback. I like to jokingly refer to TCP 443 as the Universal Firewall Bypass Protocol because it gets you through just about anything. Some networking basics with Office 365 media streams for Teams. You want to provide unfettered access for that Teams traffic, both within your environment and out to Office 365 through your internet connections. You want to open those 4 UDP ports and TCP 443. You want to turn off any packet inspection. You don't need to inspect traffic coming from your Teams clients going to Office 365. You need to turn off any acceleration, and you want to make sure that there are no proxies involved. These add latency and just degrade your media quality. You also want to make sure that you have local internet egress. It does you no good if you are in New York as a user and your internet connection comes out through LA and then you're going up to Teams and then you're calling a user down the street. You want your traffic to egress your network to the internet as close to the user as possible. It does you no good to backhaul your Teams audio calls across the WAN out to the internet and then off to Office 365. You want the call to go as directly as possible. You can bing Office 365 URLs and IP addresses, and you will get an RSS feed, an XML list, or even a proxy pack file. Though proxies are not recommended, some other products can consume this pack file and help out with your security guys who are saying, no way are we going to allow these ports outbound to any destination. So you can allow those TCP and UDP ports outbound to just those URLs and IP addresses involved in Office 365. That local internet egress that we talked about has some other considerations. The first thing we want to check out is that we are using DNS servers for internet traffic that support Anycast. If you have your own DNS server providing internet results for your clients, you might not be getting this. If you're using Google or Amazon Web Services Route 53, for example, you most definitely are. Most ISPs will give this to you as well. So the Anycast IP address that you want is 131.107.8.2. If you do a traceroute or a testnet connection with the -traceroute option to this IP, you will see how your endpoints will be connecting off to the Microsoft environment. This slide was from a presentation at Microsoft Ignite, and I thought it captured nicely how to test your connectivity off to Office 365 and watch out for silly ISP tricks. You'll see in here the yellow highlights that show that you're connecting to MSN.net. Now, the MSN in this case isn't the tab that comes up when you start Internet Explorer and has all that really great news on it. This is Microsoft's network run by the Microsoft networking team. So as soon as we see MSN.net show up in the FQDN in our traceroute, we know we're on Microsoft's network. And the goal here, remember, is to get onto Microsoft's network as fast as we can. So here we are in London, and we've got a fantastic connection. Here's another one in Paris, also really good. Here's another one in Florida, perfect. Really good stats there, 24 milliseconds. Here is a terrible one in Scotland. What's happening is the connection is going across the Atlantic to New York before the traffic hops over to Microsoft. So this ISP in Scotland either has some peering issues, hey, everybody's human, maybe they typed in something wrong in their configuration for their peering, or maybe they just don't care and they've chosen not to peer with Microsoft. In this case, your traffic from this office in Scotland will always go through New York before it reaches Office 365. If you're hosted in one of the data centers over in Europe, your traffic's going to turn around and come right back over. That is totally inefficient. So run these traceroute tests from your locations and make sure that your ISP has really good peering into Microsoft. Most major ISPs do. ISPs want traffic off of their networks usually as fast as possible because it costs them money to carry that traffic. So let's talk about media relays and transport relays. If your clients have great direct communication between each other, they will always choose to talk directly to each other. That's the best path. There's the least amount of stuff in the way. Traditionally, in the Skype for Business on-premises world, we had the media relay. This is your edge server. And as a user, you are statically assigned to an edge server. And when you need to relay traffic to get around firewall or any other kind of connectivity restrictions, your traffic goes through your edge server. If you are a user from the New York office and you're traveling to Paris and you need to talk to an edge server, your traffic's going to come all the way back to New York. That's not efficient. Going forward, Microsoft has built something called the transport relay. It's specifically designed for the cloud and gets around that static relationship of a user and a relay and gets into a concept of where you are. So instead of being static in one data center, it's discovered via that Anycast IP address. You can only get really good use of this Anycast IP if you are using a local internet breakout. If you're that New York user and you're on a corporate VPN and your traffic's coming back across to LA to get out to the internet or something like that, you will still wind up using this Anycast IP address, but you've added a bunch of traffic legs before you hop out to it. Direct internet access is what you're after. Your media relay server uses the same UDP ports for all workloads, so there's no way to look at a port number and identify what the type of traffic is that's going back and forth. The transport relay, remember we mentioned earlier that 3478, 3479, 3480, 3481, you get a different UDP port per workload, so it's immediately obvious what workload is going through based on the port number. Skype for Business on premises uses the media relay. Skype for Business Online is in the process of transitioning from using media relay to using this transport relay, and Teams always uses this transport relay. So when you're doing calls with Teams, you're always getting this best scenario. Here's another slide from a presentation at Ignite that shows this difference. We have a user in, it looks like Spain, and another user up in Germany, and they are connecting through a media relay back in the United States. And we can see our media goes all the way across and comes all the way back. This is no good for quality. Using that transport relay locally in Europe, we can see a much shorter path for our traffic between these users. We're still using a relay because it's not possible to go directly between the endpoints, but the path that's taken here is much shorter. This is call quality for this call versus the previous one will be much better. Microsoft has published this table that contains some metrics that they would like to see for traffic from your client to the Microsoft network edge and from the customer network edge to Microsoft's network edge. There's a link at the bottom of the slide. I'll have this summarized as well at the end of the presentation. So you're going to use the Skype for Business Network Assessment tool, which is going to reach out to this Anycast IP address, and it's going to test these connections with a 17-second conference call. Ideally, you want to run this for at least a week, and it's going to measure every 5 minutes and look at the 90th percentile value of those statistics. So you'll know from your New York office to Office 365, how is your connectivity? From your LA office, from your Vancouver office, what does this connectivity look like? Even from different subnets or VLANs or wired versus Wi-Fi within your network. You can run this tool on those different networks and gather these statistics and see how your actual networks line up against Microsoft's recommendations. Let's talk a bit now about permissions, auditing, and logging. Microsoft Teams, like many things in Office 365, is built on groups. From this Teams groups relationship, you get creation permissions. If a user has permissions to create a group, they have permission to create a team. Setting this permission true or false can help you control the sprawl of groups and teams within your organization. Some organizations might want this open so anyone can create a team. Others may want to restrict it and contain the sprawl. Similarly, if you've got users creating teams on their own, your naming policy might be a bit hard to control. You can configure some automatic prefixes and suffixes that will apply to a team to help you coordinate between any naming conflicts. Maybe in a global organization, for example, you've got 6 HR departments, one per country, and if they all go and they create a team called HR, you'll have a bunch of naming conflicts. So these prefixes and suffixes can help you deal with that. Within groups, you also have an expiration policy. This is helpful because your team owner is probably not going to go back and do cleanup and get rid of teams that they aren't using anymore. There's also a soft delete and restore capabilities in case things accidentally go away. There's all kinds of policies and protections, especially around guest access. There's some really fantastic reporting, and there's yet more on the roadmap coming. In terms of auditing and logging, Skype for Business is based on SIP, and we have Snooper that gives us some log analysis capabilities and some easy diagnostics. That doesn't exist with Teams media traffic. It's HTTPS based, so we need to turn to a couple of different tools to capture those streams, and the analysis at this point is fairly manual. On the Office 365 side of things, there is a ton of auditing and alerting on those audit features. So you can see who's gone in, who has created a team, who has deleted a team. You can go and you can talk to them and find out, hey, why did you delete this team? Somebody was using it, or, who broke the team? This is another slide that I grabbed straight out of an Ignite presentation. And I really like it because it talks about some of the reasons why Teams and indeed Office 365 beats the competition. The integration and the features that are available to you because of the underlying Office 365 services are second to none. You get secure single sign-on across all of your Office apps. You get app-level data protection. You get conditional access. You get modern authentication, including multi-factor and certificate authentication. Really a great story about enterprise feature sets and how Office 365 powered services are superior to what you can find out there from other companies. Everyone's favorite topic is licensing, right? Well, with Teams, things are a little easier. Right now, most of the SKUs within Office 365 will get you access to Teams. The biggest exception to this is government licensing. Teams is not yet available for government SKUs. In terms of some of the compliance that you get, it will differ based on what SKU you're on. If you're on some of the basics, like Essentials Premium and E1, you miss some of the legal hold and advanced e-discovery. That's probably not that big of an issue for you, but if you do need those features, you will need to bump up to E3 or higher. So where can you go to learn more and up your superhero game? First place I think you need to go right now is to ignite.microsoft.com and find and watch all the Teams related sessions. They are downloadable and the PowerPoints are downloadable too. There is a TechNet script that you can use that will download these sessions and the PowerPoints without you having to click on everything individually. I talked earlier about Jonathan McKinney's team set up for Ignite. You can read his blog post on the specifics of what he did. And there's also a whole pile of Microsoft resources that are just really fantastic here. For developers, head off to dev.office.com/Microsoft-Teams for all the SDKs and sample code that you could want for your tabs, connectors, and bots. For IT admins, you can have a look at a whole slew of resources for network quality, how to plan, deliver, and operate everything you need to run Teams successfully within your environment. And that's all for the presentation. I'll see you in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.